Hi, my name is Kees and I'm a spiritual teacher. And this video is me reacting to Adyashanti's awakening. I found this really cool video where you hear an AI-generated Alan Watts voice read Adyashanti's version of his last awakening, his awakening into no self. And that was something very profound, which I wanted to share with you and react to. And if you feel you want some support on your path to awakening, feel free to schedule a free coaching call or see if you're on the right path by checking out my free email course. With that said, let's go.
Awakening by Adyashanti, reprinted from the book Emptiness Dancing. Before I had my final awakening years ago, I was crazed for enlightenment. You have to be a little crazy.
That's really interesting because that's something that's a very common theme for people.
Crazy to seriously study Zen. My teacher used to say, only the crazy ones stay. One way my craziness worked was that before I went to sit with my teacher's group for a couple of hours on Sunday mornings, I would get up early at 5 o'clock or 5:30 a.m. and do extra sittings.
So usually the craziness starts for people after first awakening because they've tasted this. It's very hard for people to really love meditation until they see the results of that, until they very clearly feel like I am the universe and this is happening and this wants to transform everything into this loving experience I've had. And now I feel this dimension that wants to be expressed and this is my moment, this is what I'm doing. And when that's really clear, you see the craziness really start.
I would sit in a little room meditating and freezing to death. Sitting there on one of those particular mornings, two things happened, one after another, and they seemed...
By the way, this is also what happened to me like the year before I had my shift into no self. I meditated 3 to 8 hours a day because it was just so full on and I was so crazy about this.
Seemed paradoxical. The first one was a spontaneous seeing that everything was one. For me, that manifested as hearing a bird call, a chirp, in the front yard. And from somewhere inside me, the question arose, what is it that hears the sound? I had never asked this question before. I suddenly realized I was as much the sound and the bird as the one hearing the bird, that the hearing and sound and bird were all manifestations of one thing.
So this is oneness, is called non-dual awakening. It's also the first enlightenment, or you could say it's enlightenment in general. It depends on how you look at it. It is definitely third path in Buddhism with the fourth path model. So yeah, that's really beautiful to realize this oneness. And when I had this, it felt like everything merged into the chest and everything was, finally open. I was really looking at the world like, what is this?
I can't tell you what that one thing is, except to say one thing. I opened my eyes and I found the same thing was happening in the room. The wall and the one seeing the wall were the same thing. I thought that was very strange, and I realized that the one thinking this was another manifestation of that. I got up and began to move around the house looking for something that wasn't part of the one. But everything was a reflection of that one thing. Everything was the divine. I wandered into the living room. In the middle of a step, consciousness or awareness suddenly left everything, whether it was a physical thing or body thing or world thing. All in the step of a foot, everything disappeared. What arose was an image of what seemed like an infinite number of past incarnations, as if heads were lined up one behind another as far back as I could see. Awareness realized something like, my God, I've been identified with various forms for umpteen lifetimes. At that moment, consciousness, spirit, realized it had been so identified with all these forms that it really thought it was a form right up to this lifetime. All of a sudden, consciousness was unconfined to the form and existed independently. It was no longer defining itself by any form, whether that form was a body, a mind, a lifetime, a single thought, or a memory. I saw this, but I almost...
This is very much the no-self shift, right? Which he has like very fast after, which is, quite common. It happens to quite some more people. I've had like 3 years in between these shifts. A lot of people have like very fast transitions as well. It really depends. Some people never have the last shifts, It very much depends. But it's kind of like the name of the book in which Adyashanti is talking about this is Emptiness Dancing. What comes online is this first awakening, which he's describing, the non-dual awakening, is like a fullness realization. But then this second thing is like an emptiness realization, and also the not personal or the no self aspect of that.
Couldn't believe it. It was like someone just stuck $1 million in my pocket, and I kept pulling it out as if I didn't believe I had it. But it couldn't be denied either. Even though I am using the word I, there was no I, only the one. These two experiences happened together, one following within a few moments of the other. In the first, I became the oneness of everything, and in the second, I became the consciousness or spirit that totally woke up out of all identification, even out of oneness. When the oneness dropped away, there was still a basic awakeness, but it had two different aspects. I'm everything and I'm absolutely nothing.
So this is the nature of consciousness, which the everything aspect usually comes online with the non-dual awakening. That's the loss of the person as well. But then usually there's an identification with reality or this everythingness, and then that can fall away, and you can even be identified to nothingness, and then you can have this transition into no self. And for him that went really fast into two things. One where you have this non-dual, it's everything, I am everything, etc., and then the I drops, and then the nothingness aspect is revealed, so you have full scope of reality, everything and nothing.
Beginning, the realization of self. The next thing that happened was that I took a step, just an ordinary step. It felt like the way a baby does when it takes his first good step and then smiles and looks around as if to say, "Did you see that?" And you can see his joy. So I took a step and it was like, wow, the first step. And another step and then another, and I kept moving in circles because every step was the first step. It was a miracle. In each first step, formless consciousness and oneness just merged together so that the awakeness that had always identified itself as form was now actually inside of the form, unidentified. It wasn't looking through any thoughts or memories of what had come before, just through the five senses. With no history or memory, every step felt like a first step. Then the funniest thought came through my mind.
The everything felt like the first step. I also recognize that. I know that the first times I went on an elevator or the first times I went on a train, I was like a little bit scared, but also like, wow, what's this? It's so cool. Like at the same time.
Funny to me after 13 years of Zen practice. Oops, I just woke up out of Zen. Yeah. When you wake up, you realize that you wake up out of everything, including
spirituality, yeah.
All the things that have helped to bring you there. Yeah. The next thing I did was write my wife this odd note. It said something like, "Happy birthday, today is my birthday, I've just been born." I left it for her, and when I drove past our house to go to my meditation group, I saw her standing there waving the note in her hand. I don't know how, but she knew exactly what it meant. I didn't tell my teacher anything about the experience for about 3 months because it seemed pointless. Why would anyone need to know this? I felt no need to tell anyone or be congratulated. It seemed totally sufficient in and of itself.
Yeah, I've had that same experience where I actually don't even know what to say about this or what to share about this because it's so special but so ordinary at the same time. You realize that there is no self, but there's never been a self with anybody. You see through an illusion or a certain energy or sensation, and when that drops, it's like everything is this already. So any striving wouldn't make sense.
It was only later that I learned that my experience corresponded to what my teacher had been talking about all along. I realized that this awakening was what all the teachings were about. In a very real way, that experience, which continues and is still the same today, is the foundation of everything I talk about. When we really start to take a look at who we think we are, we become very grace-prone. We start to see that while we may have various thoughts, beliefs, and identities, they do not individually or collectively tell us who we are. A mystery presents itself. We realize that when we really look at ourselves clearly and carefully, it is actually astounding how completely we humans define ourselves by the content of our minds, feelings, and history. Many forms of spirituality try to get rid of thoughts, feelings, and memories, to make the mind blank, as if that were a desirable or spiritual state. But to have the mind blank is not necessarily wise. Instead, it is more helpful.
blank mind is kind of like going back in evolution, right? Becoming something like, a fish or something like that. I don't know if a fish has thoughts. I don't know. I'm not a fish, but it doesn't make sense to have no thought. It makes sense to have a very quiet mind and have very functional thoughts.
To see through thoughts and to recognize that a thought is just a thought, a belief, a memory.
Yeah, a thought is no problem.
Then we can stop binding consciousness or spirit to our thoughts and mental states. With that first step, when I realized that what was looking through my eyes and senses was awakeness, or spirit rather than conditioning or memory, I saw that the same spirit...
This is what, for me, after the no-self thing, it felt like, or the shift into enlightenment, or whatever you can call it, it felt like this is source. Everything is source, but what I am has always been source, and it has never been individual in that sense.
Was actually looking through all the other pairs of eyes. It didn't matter if it was looking through other conditioning. It was the exact same thing. It was seeing itself everywhere.
Exactly. He says it doesn't matter if it's seeing through conditioning, meaning when you hit this point, there's not so much conditioning left. And with other people, the only difference is that there's more conditioning, which is not per se a problem. It's not that they're not source or something like that, right? Source is also conditioning. So it's different, but it's not a problem. And that's something I immediately realized, like, why did I make such a big thing out of this shift or this enlightenment? Because it's what we all are. It's just covered a little bit, and that even is not a problem. It is source as well.
Not only in the eyes, but also in the trees, the rocks, and the floor. It is paradoxical that the more this spirit or consciousness starts to taste itself, not as a thought or idea or belief, but as just a simple presence of awakeness, the more this awakeness is reflected everywhere. The more we wake up out of bodies and minds and identities, the more we see that bodies and minds are actually just manifestations of that same spirit, that same presence. The more we realize that who we are is totally outside of time, outside of the world, and outside of everything that happens.
Outside of form or formlessness, it's like, that's just an expression. Form and formlessness, or physical, non-physical, it's just an expression of source.
The more we realize that this same presence is the world, all that is happening and all that exists. It is like two sides of a coin. The biggest barrier to awakening is the belief that it is something rare. When this barrier is dropped, or at least you start to tell yourself, I really don't know if my belief that awakening is difficult is true or not, then everything becomes instantly available to you. Since this is all that exists, it can't be rare and difficult unless we insist it is. The basis of all this is not theoretical, it is experiential. No one taught it to me, and no one can teach it to you. What is so beautiful about awakening is that when you are no longer functioning through your conditioning, then the sense of me, who was living that life, is no longer there.
So this me creates an attachment to everything that's happening, right? I did it. It's my thing. It's my problem. It's my pleasure. And that creates the holding on as well.
People are familiar with the sense of a me living this life. But when this is seen through, the experience is that what really runs and operates this life is love. And this same love is in everybody all the time. When it is working its way through your personal stuff, it gets dissipated. But it is still there. Nobody owns this love. Everybody is essentially the manifestation of this love. You have experienced moments in your life, whether or not you are aware of them, when you momentarily forgot the I with which you have been identified. It can happen spontaneously at a beautiful sight, or it can occur from egoic forgetfulness. People usually discount these moments. After experiencing the nice moment, you then reconstitute your familiar sense of identity. But actually, these opportunities are like little peepholes through which the truth is experienced.
Yeah, what a beautiful video. Yeah, that's something I resonate with, like all the moments of flow I've had before, which were very much like no self moments. So I used to practice martial arts, and when you spar with martial arts, you can't think about what you're doing. If you're thinking about what you're doing, you lose instantly, or you get kicked or whatever, or you get choked or whatever. So with martial art was my first experience with like this sense of flow, this sense of meditation, which is definitely what no self is. And I think my beginning experience with getting drunk and going to parties was also a little bit like that. You know, it's like not commenting on yourself, or try to be in the moment and not think about what you're doing. And I was getting quite good at that. Not per se the drinking part, but more like dancing or losing myself in, the party, or just being social and flowing that way. And later on, it was getting into the flow with work, or with exercise, or with some of my triathlon I've been doing recently. So yeah, this getting into the flow and being there, that's what no self already is. It's like forgetting about yourself and just, from this place of surrender, being with what is. That is the path of heart. So thank you for watching this, and I hope it inspires you to practice your meditation, or to practice in the way that matches you. And if you're interested in that, and maybe interested in getting more tips, just let me know and schedule a call below. Thanks for your time. Bye. See you next time. Subscribe and ring the bell if you want to stay up to date for my newest videos. Bye.